Never underestimate how far you can go by simply believing in yourself. This again comes down to what fills up your cup. How early are you willing to wake up? How much effort are you willing to put in? What time do you go to bed? What time do you stop working? Are you focused on relentlessly trying to self-improve?
Welcome back, friends, to another episode of the Eternal Optimist podcast. I'm your host, Matt Drinkon, and I am here with my new friend, Mr. Zachary Gray. He goes by Zach, and today we're going to have a great conversation. We're going to talk about hard stuff that has happened in his world, what he's learned from it, and then what he's putting forth in the world now. And to kick things off, I'm going to ask Zach, if you could, if you had to give us, let's just say, 3 bullet points, just the context that's important that we might need to know as we get started in our discussion. What are 3 things that our audience should know about you? Feel free to be serious or joke, whatever, your style.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on today, Matt. I hope that my experiences and the things that I've gone through in my life can help be impactful and inspiring to some of your listeners. And I hope that my story effectively just may motivate some people, may make them feel like they're able to persevere and be resilient and continue to carry on in an impactful way that will ultimately yield positive change for themselves as well as hopefully others in their lives.
Wow. Awesome. I'm already on the edge of my seat, my friend. You hit a lot of my favorite words: persevere and resilience and inspire and awesome. So let's start off with something simple. Where are you coming from today? Where do you live?
Yeah, so I live in Framingham, Massachusetts. I grew up in central Massachusetts.
Okay.
I know that earlier you had kind of just hit on that, what are sort of the 3 bullet points that are worthwhile or worthy to note or bring up to the listeners here today. And I think that where I would effectively start is by sharing some of my childhood experiences and how those have impacted me personally and helped me become the best version of myself today.
Okay.
And where I would start is I grew up in a house with a single working dad. A single income household where my dad was a sole provider. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. We were on food stamps for pretty decent part of my childhood.
Okay.
I think that my dad was probably putting in close to 70-hour weeks, working 6 days a week, leaving at 5 a.m, coming home around 7 p.m. most days. And I think that was really motivating for me to see. And that was sort of like what set the standard for me in terms of what was expected from like a work ethic standpoint. Okay. Neither of my parents went to college. Nobody in my family had ever been to college. So kind of a little bit of background about me in general.
Yes, sir.
I think the second bullet point would be when I was a senior in high school, my parents filed for bankruptcy and basically effectively told me 2 weeks before I was supposed to commit to college. I graduated at the time. I was set to graduate in like the top 10 to 15% of my class. I was high performing academically. I got into all the colleges that I applied to, and I was set to make a decision on where I was going to go to college. And my parents came up to me and said, "Hey, so that college thing, yeah, like we can't really help you with that. Good luck."
Wow.
And I made the executive decision at that time to stop playing sports, quit my baseball Legion team in May immediately. And I took on 2 full-time jobs. I worked 80 hours a week from May to September. My objective was to pay for my freshman year of college without incurring any debt. I walked in my first day of my freshman year. I slapped a cashier's check on the table and I said, "I hope this is good for the first 2 semesters." And I went on my merry way. I worked full time my whole entire freshman year while I was taking classes. And I think that was kind of like the jumping off point for me, where I was able to be the first person in my family to go to college
Mm-hmm.
while, effectively accumulating enough money to support my freshman year by working 2 full-time jobs. After I got done with my freshman year, I
Pause for 1 second, Zach.
decided,
In that freshman year, you slapped the cashier's check down and paid for it. So massive respect to you, my friend, for working all that summer to earn that. So that was a big transition to do that. But what jobs did you have, and what kind of hours were you working? If you're working 70 or 80 hours, 2 full timers, like what was your regular day or week like for that freshman year?
Yeah, I would wake up really early in the morning. I would start work at normally like 4:30 or 5 o'clock at Dunkin' Donuts.
Okay.
I was working like 40 hours a week at Dunkin' Donuts. I'd get done around 2 o'clock. I'd get done. I would go home and eat lunch. I'd go ahead and hour and a half workout. Around 3 o'clock, I would leave, and there was kind of 2 different things that I was doing. One, I was doing I would call it like somewhere between like exterior maintenance of properties and like landscaping, effectively. And I was also, I was running events at, is a company that was sort of a contact of my network, that I was running events where effectively I was a tournament director for charity Texas Hold'em tournaments, and I would be the dealer at the events as well as facilitating and running the entire event.
Awesome.
And I would normally do that from like 3 or 4 p.m. to like 9 to 11 p.m. on average.
Wow. Okay. So you really were living that work ethic that was the standard, and you were living it, and you did whatever it took. And thank you. Please continue. Wow.
Yeah. And so I got done with my freshman year. I said that was really not that fun. I was able to navigate it while not incurring any debt. And I think that was really impactful for me and important for me because of my parents having just filed for bankruptcy. I was not too privy on acquiring debt. At that time, I sort of was at a crossroads where I said, I'm going to have to go do this dance all over again this summer, or I'm going to have to take on debt. And what I ended up doing instead was I actually ended up enlisting in the military. I walked into a recruiter's office on a Monday. I enlisted on Friday. I went to boot camp 3 months later. I was gone for 6 months, went to boot camp and secondary training. And then I proceeded to come back, and I finished my collegiate experience, like 3.5 years worth of academics in like 3 years. So I graduated on time. And the entire time in which I was going to school, I was effectively getting paid somewhere between 10 and 15K a year to go to school from reimbursement of financial aid as well as military stipends.
Okay.
So I ended up graduating college with close to 40K in savings, no debt. And that's probably kind of like synopsis of like my younger years.
Yeah.
And then in terms of where I am now.
It makes me curious for a second, Zach. It makes me curious because you bucked the trend. You were the first one in your family to go to college, and your relationship with money and or debt was one that you had a crutch or you had an excuse you could make that I didn't know any different, and something in you caused you to do it differently. All right. So I know you're setting the stage for where we are now, but I'm curious what your relationship was with money and with debt, through your teenage years to college to this point, because you've got 40K in savings and you came from a place where it was bankrupt. And I'm not trying to poop on family or parents, because you've learned some great stuff. But what was your relationship like with money, like growing up and into this place we're now you have 40,000 in savings when you graduate.
Yeah, I was always extremely frugal. It was always about creating security because I was operating from a place of seeing my parents never have financial stability or financial security, and money always being a barrier. So
Okay.
for me, I felt like I would try to control as many variables as possible to create favorable outcomes. And I think that transitioned into my adulthood, where my first like 4 to 5 years of my professional life, um, I lived in a 3-bedroom apartment. I rented a room with random roommates. I was paying $500 a month. I did that for about 5 years or so. I was able to save 50 to 60% of my salary annually, and I mean, I didn't even have a TV. I didn't have a laptop. I didn't even have blinds on my windows. And in that 5 year timetable, I ended up shifting my life, becoming an entrepreneur. I opened my own gym in which I now run a strength and conditioning facility located in like a kind of a high net worth earning space in like a Boston submarket called Needham, Massachusetts. The gym is called Gray's Anatomy, and I've basically taken my proceeds from running my own gym operation and utilized the proceeds that I have earned from my gym operation to get into multifamily buy and hold real estate investing. And over the last 2.5 years, I've managed to go from a single townhouse to roughly about 180 units.
Wow. Man, well, first of all, congratulations on, things that you had every reason or every possible crutch or excuse to not do what you just described, and you still figured out a way. And now that you've done this and you've gotten to a place where you've had this degree of success in a couple of businesses and it continues to expand, what are some of the lessons that you can share with us and reflect on? Let's just say from the past, we'll start with Gray's Anatomy. What were the first things that you learned about running a business in Gray's Anatomy you can share with us?
Yeah, I think that like so it's kind of an interesting set of things. I think there's two things. I think one is majority of people, regardless of age demographic, are simply not willing to wake up at 4 a.m, begin their day, put in a day's worth of work, and work until 6 or 7 p.m., 5 or 6 days a week, to try to outpace their peers. And I think that if you simply are willing to wake up earlier than others, put in more hours, and work longer and more frequently than your peers, I think you're sort of destined for success by default. I think that's one. I think number two is,
Okay.
I think that my number one prerogative from a very early age was to accumulate enough savings to be able to buy a multifamily property in which I could house myself for free by renting out the units and then living in it independently. I think that by living for free, you effectively eliminate your largest expense, which is rent or mortgage payment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what person would, if you in Massachusetts, the average rent is somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500 a month. What person would not want a $24,000 to $30,000 a year raise Because effectively that's what that is. If you're living for free in a house and you have a place to live and you don't have to make that payment. So I think that sets you up on just this exponential runway for financial success to be able to continue to facilitate future moves. And I think that was a really impactful piece for me. And and the actually, can you give me 2 seconds? Actually,
Of course.
I apologize.
No,
I'm gonna.
it makes me wonder. Was that the target to get to that place where you gave yourself that raise from when you opened the business, or from when you got out of college? I mean, when did this idea of renting and living in the space and giving yourself when did that start to come to fruition in your mind?
I think that my main focus was that when I started my own business, my number one prerogative was to mitigate my risks. And so my number one risk was my business will never be successful if I have other financial constraints that limit my ability to invest in my business. And so if I can continue to reinvest money into my business to scale my business, I will be more successful, and I can invest more money in my business if I don't have to focus on monthly expenses that limit my ability to do so. And I think that being able to maximize reinvesting in my business, scaling my business, taking more risk because I didn't have monthly expenses that I had to be concerned about, it allowed for me to be more creative, create more opportunity, take more risks. And I think it transpired into having success. And I think simultaneously, the other reasons as to why I did this was we were operating in an environment in which the federal government was basically printing money hand over fist in order to sustain our existing economic structure during COVID-19. And the way that I looked at it is, if the federal government is printing money in excess quantity, that is going to correspond to asset prices rapidly appreciating. And if you're a person, basically, it was a race to acquire as many assets in a shorter period of time as possible. Because if you're not holding assets while the government is printing money, you're getting left behind, and you're never going to be able to make up that ground.
Spoken like someone who had a plan, they got into it. And I love that you have this defense but behind you. Like, I got to mitigate the risk. And at the same time, if I have a chance to play offense right now and go and do this is the time. And so you started the business, you're running Grey's Anatomy, you're mitigating your risk by leveling up, by removing the expenses so you can reinvest back in the business. So now, you went from one property to 180 units. What happens now that we're maybe a little bit past that market low in the printing? Maybe they're still printing. I think actually they are still printing. So what's the next part of the vision that happens for you next, Zach?
Yeah, the way that I look at it is we meaning me and my immediate investment partner, we do all of our deals together. I think that we have proven our track record significantly over the last 2 to 3 years. And I think that when a lot of prominent investors over the last year and a half or so realized that the Fed was now going to rapidly increase rates over that time frame. And I think as rates went from relatively close to 3.5% all the way up to somewhere around 8.5%, I think that a lot of investors said, hold my beer. I'm going to go chill and hang on the beach for a year and a half. Come find me when things come back down to earth. And I think that we looked at that as an opportunity to, I think it was very hard I think a lot of those people weren't interested in trying to find deals because with rates at a significant, at really a high in like the last 40 to 50 years.
Yeah.
I think that they looked at it and said, there's not really much room for us to go find deals right now. And I think the way that we looked at it is anything that you can find as a deal right now that makes sense, when you drop rates down from 7.5%, 7%, 8% down to 5 or 5.5%, which is inevitable that will happen at some point. We're not going to have 7 to 8% interest rates for the rest of our lives. I think all of those deals that you're finding that make sense at 8% or 7% are going to be home runs at 5%. And I think to that point, I looked at the environment that was 7 to 8% interest rates and said, as a buyer, you have all the leverage. You have the ability to negotiate lower prices. You have the ability to negotiate seller credits. You have the ability to negotiate more advantageous terms with banks because there's not as much volume. There's not as many refinances. Like there's so many variables that work in your favor that allow for you to maximize your circumstance and get properties in your possession during a time in which rates are at all-time highs. And then I think that as rates, I think we're heading into right now, which the Fed has already confirmed that over the next 12 to 18 month time frame, that there's going to be multiple rate cuts in 2024 heading into 2025. And I think that as you see those rate cuts happen, I think that you're going to continue to see those deals that we bought are going to be even more high performing. I think that you're going to see, because debt costs are going to become cheaper, you're going to see rapid price appreciation or asset appreciation again. And I think that anything that you bought at 7 to 8% is not only going to see, equity gains in the form of appreciation, but also your cash on cash returns are going to be much stronger because your debt cost is going to go down.
Wow. So the deals that are good or that could be tenable now at 7 to 8%, when the rates go down, it's going to be amazing.
Be home runs.
Yeah.
And I think that we look at it and it's like, we're trying to acquire as much stuff as possible, as fast as possible right now, because on the horizon is a whole bunch of rate cuts and you're effectively just walking into, gains. You're just walking into gains.
Yes. Well, I love the way you've just given us a schooling on this process and how you did it. So there's credibility on everything that you've just said. And so what is it that you might be able to offer or share with the listeners in terms of, do you have a company that we might invest in, or what is it that we might do to gain some of this knowledge? Because it sounds attractive, but you're speaking a language most of us don't speak.
Yeah, 100%. So effectively, in most of our so our company is actually called Freedom Management. And, I'd be happy to talk to anybody who would be interested in learning more just about real estate in general, real estate investing. I actually am currently running a mentorship group for people who are interested in getting into real estate investing or people who are looking to scale their existing portfolio. And how to do that feasibly by developing systems to be able to handle more volume. But I think that effectively in most of our deals, we target to provide somewhere between an 8 to 10% cash on cash return for our investors. And we aim to be able to return 60 to 70% of their startup capital in roughly 2 years or so. So the way that we look at it is most of our investors are getting 60 to 70% of their startup capital back. They retain their ownership stake in the buildings that we're buying initially. They're retaining their ownership stake while they only have 30 cents on the dollar in the deal. And, the entire time in which that process is occurring, they're earning 8 to 10% of their money, which, for most people is a win. I think that two other big avenues that can be, value add for us from like an investor standpoint is that because of the way that we operate our deals, people who, and I'm happy to go into more detail about this, but the returns that you're garnering at 8 to 10%, you effectively aren't paying taxes on the 8 to 10% return. So it's really more like earning close to 11 to 14% from a return standpoint. I think one of the other things that I will mention is that due to the way that we depreciate our properties, most of our investors not only don't pay taxes on the returns that they're receiving, they also have carryover losses. And those carryover losses can be really impactful for people who either A, own and run their own businesses as entrepreneurs, because they can offset passive earnings that you gain from running your own business as an entrepreneur. I think that one of the other avenues is that if you own, if let's say you're a standard corporate W-2 earner and you have company stock or stock options, when you liquidate stock options, you incur a massive gain and you have to pay taxes on those gains. Well, the losses from investing in our deals allow for you to use the losses to offset the gains that you incurred from selling your stock, your company stock. And so we have a lot of people who have who are corporate earners or corporate W-2 people that are in the tech space or in in software sales or things like that, where they'll come and invest money with us so that they can actually sell their shares, have access to their money, and then the deals that they're investing in with us will make it so they don't have to pay taxes on their sale of stock.
That sounds nice, and I don't quite understand everything about it. So I would like to go a little more granular into it.
Yeah,
because I think
100%.
what you're sharing is that if we invest with you, there's some type of setup or structure where it's a debt position, so that if it's that, we can carry a loss instead of having to take the gain. And I don't even understand what I'm talking about right now. I've only read about it. So please help us, the layperson, understand.
Yeah. So the most simplistic way to think about it is like all buildings that exist, right? There's many components of a building. There's flooring, there's paint, there's appliances, there's cabinets, there's plumbing, there's electrical, there's a roof. Everything has a lifespan, and the lifespan for those things are different. The lifespan for a roof might be 15 to 20 years. The lifespan for paint might be 2 to 3 years. So the idea is, what you do is there's something that's called a cost segregation analysis, which you're bringing a professional who comes into the property and they analyze every single component of the property. They provide the lifespan of that component. And then what they do is that they depreciate that component over the lifespan of the component. Okay. So they say, paint lasts 3 years, flooring lasts 5 years, roofs last 15 years. And so every year you take 1/3 or 1/5 or 1/15 of that item. Well, the standard is that the government has determined that everything in a building needs to be renovated or attended to in 27 years. So the standard is that most people who own property get to claim 1/27th of the building value as a loss every year. When you do this analysis instead, you're not taking 1/27th. You're actually expediting the loss. It is much, much more than 1/27th.
Okay.
And habitually, it corresponds to 1/5 of the property value. So effectively, that's you're almost getting 5 years worth of depreciation losses upon acquisition. So what this corresponds to is, I'm going to give a hypothetical scenario.
Okay.
Let's say, for round numbers, you had a building that was worth $1 million. That building that's worth $1 million, let's say rather than 1/27th, let's divide it. Let's say it's 30 years. So in a 30-year time horizon, 1/30th is going to equate to a $33,000 loss per year.
Okay.
So if you were operating with the standard model, you're going to get 1/30th, which is a $33,000 loss. And you would
Yes.
claim that as a loss on your taxes.
Okay.
Well, if you do a cost segregation analysis and you get to claim 1/5, now you get a $200,000 loss. So with a $33,000 loss, you can offset $33,000 of earnings. Well, with a $200,000 loss, you can offset $200,000 worth of earnings. So if you're what are the returns that you're garnering on the deal? They might be, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. Great. We'll wipe those out. And then you're going to have 180 to go play with that can offset stock sales, that can offset your business earnings. And this is an extremely advantageous avenue for folks who are entrepreneurs or for people who work W-2 jobs who have stock positions and want access to their money.
Excellent. So the advantage in investing in something like this or investing in freedom management is that if we are entrepreneurs or if we are W-2 who have stock gains that we want to offset, then this can help us in W-2. It can help us as an entrepreneur. In this exact example, if our end of the year, let's just say our profit is less than 200,000, it's 180K lost over there, we could offset some of that and not have to pay as much tax on our profit at the end of the year.
Yeah. And then I think the last piece is, let's say that you're neither of those folks.
Okay.
Let's say you don't have stock options. Let's say you're not an entrepreneur. Okay. What I would say is you go invest your money in the stock market, and normally you're going to buy index funds. And an index fund earns 6 to 8% per year on average over the last 20 to 30 years. Mm-hmm. So you're earning 6 to 8% on your money. But when you take it out, you got to pay capital gains tax on it. So you're sacrificing 20%. So it's really like earning 4.8% or earning 6.4%. So if you're earning 4.5 to 6.5% in the stock market after you pay capital gains tax, that's the standard. Okay. Well, for us, in our deals, we're paying 8 to 10% cash on cash, checks in the mail, but you're also not paying taxes on it. So now that's the equivalent of like 11 to 14%. So now 11 to 14% versus 4.5 to 6.5, you're looking at 2.5 to 3 times the returns. So if somebody said to you, "Hey, I can return 2 to 3 times your money versus the stock market," who wouldn't want that? And I think that the other piece that's not being considered here is we have it. That's void of the tax savings relative to the depreciation, and that's void of property appreciation over time. So you're getting 2 to 3x your returns in the stock market in the mail. You're getting losses to offset stock sales or earnings, and you're getting access to the price appreciation of the building and the asset indefinitely.
Okay, so why would I not do that? Well, first of all, I'd want to trust the person. So I'd go and look at the people that own the company, and I'd see what have they done. And of course, you've just shared your story. And so we know the work ethic is there, and we know that you have a relationship with money and debt, and we know you have a relationship with mitigating risk. All right, so you got to check the people out first, and then second, I guess it's just getting comfortable with the idea of working with concepts we don't quite understand. So how do you help us get comfortable with that? Because we can listen to it now and get excited, but how do we take the next step to really start to get comfortable and make that first investment, get off the bench?
Yeah. So what I would say is that for us, we pump out a monthly newsletter in which we talk about all the existing projects that we're doing. So, we have people who are invested in 2 or 3 of our projects, and they're getting monthly updates on those projects to hear about what they're doing. What's our vacancy rate on the property? Did we receive all the rents? Are we, Did we have any unforeseen maintenance issues? So these people are getting monthly updates as to what the performance is like on their where their money is vested. So I think that's kind of an important component. And then I think that anytime that we are putting together a deal, I think that for smaller deals, we will actually meet with investors on one-on-one calls and then walk through the process to talk about the deal in particular. And in the event that we're doing larger deals where we're going to be raising a fair amount of capital, we'll actually put together a PowerPoint presentation and then we'll host a webinar that you can either sit in on and listen to the webinar and then at the end, we take basically a 30-minute Q&A from all the people who are there.
Okay.
And we also record the webinar and then we send it out to our entire investor network. So if people weren't able to attend the webinar itself, they actually have the means to be able to watch it as well as hear other people's questions and listen to it on their own time. And this can be whether you are prepared and ready to take action in investing. This can be a tool to help assist in making you feel comfortable, but also it can be a learning tool for people who actually may be intrigued but aren't ready to take that step yet.
Okay, so 2 follow-ups. One is, how do we get on the monthly newsletter mailing list so we can start to get involved and learn from you? So that's first, is how do we get the newsletter?
Yeah, so what I would say is it's actually in my bio on my Instagram. So I think the best course of action would be follow me on Instagram, and then you can join my newsletter, and then you can get monthly updates as to all the projects that we're doing, as well as you'll get projects that we are acquiring and looking to raise money for. My Instagram is at the 1099 mindset. So at the 1099 mindset. Again, my name is Zach Gray, and if you right in the bio, you can join the newsletter and you can check it out. And hopefully we can help some people make some money.
Fantastic. I'm on it right now. I'm looking over here at Zach on the Instagram right now. And let's see. We can see it's got on here multifamily real estate investor, 179 units owned under agreement. Massachusetts and South Carolina. You're down here in the Carolinas too. Good. That's not too far from me. Good. 24 million in assets under management so far. Wow. And that was not that way it's just a few short years ago.
That's right.
And now we're building, we're growing. Gym owner and syndicator. And so how do I get to the newsletter? Is it the link here? Just click the link?
Yep.
Okay.
You can click the link and it will allow for you to join the newsletter.
Yeah, this is very simple to do. So I'm going to invite everyone to go and do this. It's just another way to learn more about what Zach's talking about, because this is a world, this investing and being whether you're an investor passively in real estate, you get involved with syndication like Zach's. This is something that we need an education on, and we need to be doing, my friends out there. Money sitting in the bank is money losing value. So to have a way to go out there and learn from someone who has put in the sweat equity and is willing to teach you, that's what kind of minimum investments are we talking about here, Zach?
So it depends on the deal in particular, but normally it can be anywhere from 25 to 75K on average. That's sort of the standard minimum.
Okay, got it. So that's a place to start. That's the ballpark we're in. So here's my invitation to the audience. I'll ask Zach what mine is to go to Zach on Instagram at the 1099 mindset. It's really easy to find. And you see that, darn it, he has facial hair. He's got a big beard. So don't be intimidated if you don't have facial hair like me, because you all know I don't have any. But it's very easy to talk to, and he's got the experience to do it. So I encourage you to go and check it out here on Instagram at the 1099 mindset. Get on the newsletter and have a conversation with Zach, because this is stuff that it may sound exciting and cool, but if you don't do anything, then nothing is going to happen. So go and follow and connect with them, and then see how that might be able to lead you to learn and get that first step in the door. And like Zach, who didn't have any real estate properties at all, has gone, because he's learned the system and now he's a syndicator, he has learned how to do this. So go and learn with someone who's doing it.
And what I would say is, I don't know exactly what the stat is, but it's something along the lines of like 90% of millionaires make their first million through real estate. And so I don't know. I know it's something in the ballpark of that, but I think that what it comes down to is there are there are people who own real estate, and those are the people who effectively become really affluent and rich over time. And there are people who choose not to own real estate. And I think that it becomes really challenging to reach the same threshold financially without having owned real estate.
Well said, my friend. Well said. Well, Zach, I appreciate what you've had to share with us today. So we know where to follow you. We're going to connect with you here. And the main place is the Instagram. Is there a freedom management website? You may have said that. I did not catch it because I was logging into your Instagram.
So on that mailing list, you can access that's right on our website, and you can check it out. In general, what I would say is that you can peruse around, join the mailing list. I think the other thing too is you're welcome to DM me on Instagram as well if you want to connect, if you want to talk in more detail. Also happy to discuss the possibility for people who maybe at the sort of beginning stages of wanting to get involved in real estate but don't really know how. Again, happy to discuss that as well and sort of point in the right direction. But yeah, I think that the thought is that you need a lot of money to get started in your journey. And I think that one of the things that I would say is that if you live in other parts of the US and other states aside from Massachusetts, what I would say is that there's multifamily properties in many states that are available for somewhere between 150, 200, 250K. And you're looking at, in most circumstances, you're able to put 3 to 3.5% down on a property in the event that you're going to be an owner occupant and you're going to live in that property. So you could be in a situation where you need $6,000 to $10,000 to get involved. And, that's less than a car for most people. Mm-hmm. So I think in the grand scheme of things, I think that so many people look at it and they think that it's like this really unattainable, option. But I think that really what it comes down to is I think everybody has the ability to get involved. I think if they're willing to live in the property. And again, I think if you're willing to live in the property, you mitigate your biggest expense. And I think it just trampolines you into this stratosphere of being able to perpetually make more moves. And I think that is going to have profound effects for not only for you, but your entire family and your kids and, the people that come after you.
Man, this is a kind of a great teaser to the masterclass that is Zach and what he's going to teach you when you join this or when you get the newsletter and connect. So it sounds good. I just signed up, everyone, because I'm always looking to learn from people who do exactly what Zach is doing. Real estate syndication is on the rise, but some people right now are not taking that plunge because they don't understand it, or they feel that it's just an insurmountable capital number I have to have. And it really can be simple. It really can be simple. Just got to take the first step. So, Zach, I'd love to ask you a few questions as we get near the end here in the lightning round. I'm curious if there is, let's just talk books for a second. If there is a book or a resource, maybe you can share between 1 and 3 of them that have had a major impact on you in your life journey. What might be 1 to 3 resources that have had an impact on you?
I'm big into books. I actually, for the last 3 years, my goal was to read between 12 and 25 books a year for the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's coincidence that in the last 3 years, I have made the largest strides in personal growth. I have made the largest strides in terms of financial independence, financial growth. I think I have made the largest strides in relationship building with others. networking, connecting, building friendships, relationships, business relationships. And I think those two things are very related. I think that it doesn't matter what the content itself is. What matters is there are two types of people in this world, and I think that you have to decide which one you want to be. I think that there is the person who wakes up every single day in a relentless effort for self-improvement, and I think that there are people who wake up every single day and are going through the motions and are happy to be complacent. And I think that if you're intentional about self-improvement, and that could be, it could be viewed in many ways. It could be improving your mental health. It could be improving your physical health. It could be improving your social relationships. It could be improving your financial literacy. It could be improving your knowledge on nutrition. It could be improving your knowledge on learning a skill. There's so many ways in which you can improve. And I think that what it comes down to is, I'm going to kind of hit on the book piece here, which is a book that was really impactful to me in my early teen years is a book called The Alchemist. And it's all about, it's more of like a fairy tale book than it is like this like nonfiction, like, real dry kind of info heavy content. And what it's about is it's about seeking ultimate fulfillment, determining what it is that fills up your cup and what makes you happy intrinsically and what are you put on this planet to do and want to do. And I think that is where you should start when it comes to self-improvement, because there's nothing that's going to motivate you more to improve than doing something that you intrinsically love. And I think that was a huge eye opener for me. I went to school for finance, and I was passionate about not being in debt, but I also was extremely passionate about taking care of myself physically, mentally, and optimizing my health through, what I feed myself in nutrition. And what I would say is that I actually graduated with a finance degree and then became a personal trainer as my profession. But this is where I've ended up because I was relentlessly curious about how to become the best coach I could possibly become. And I think that what it comes down to is you don't have to go to college to get a 4-year degree to succeed. You have to wake up every day and be relentlessly curious about something that you're passionate about, and you will achieve success if you do that. And I think that's for me, the first book is The Alchemist. The second book for me is a book called Go Giver. And I read this book at a really, really important inflection point in my life where my entire life I grew up in an environment of scarcity. And so I operated from a mindset of preserve, hoard, be mindful, frugal, conserve resources.
Okay.
And I operated from that standpoint to grow and grow and grow and grow and create favorable outcomes for myself. And the biggest inflection point in life is you reach a point in which you cannot grow further without depending on other people. And when that moment hits, you have to alter your way of thinking from scarcity mindset to abundance mindset. And the only way for you to take it to that stratosphere level is to take all the people that you depend on in your cohort that show up to grind for you, to go to bat for you every day. And you got to incentivize those people to care about the outcomes that you care about. And now what you're doing is you're giving up resources to get those people to row the boat in the same direction as you. And I think that is operating from you understanding you're going to get a lot farther with 10, 15, 20, 30 people rowing the boat in the same direction rather than you just simply rowing faster.
Great
So you
analogy.
have to be willing to give up, and you have to be willing to give up resources in order for you to continue to gain resources. And it's not about owning the whole pie. It's about making the pie bigger. And that book, Go Giver, for me was, it was like, I read that book and I was like, my possibilities are limitless.
And Zach, that was an amazing answer. Not only the lessons from the Go Giver, but the idea that if you think you can get there on your own just by getting stronger, tougher, bigger, row faster, how about the people that don't have to do all of that? Instead, they enlist others, they serve others, and they bring them onto their team. It was such a great example. And it illustrates to our listeners that Zach knows what he's talking about, because that's not something that people who are in that position of scarcity, who are doing it all themselves, they don't get that. They don't talk that way. So I'm glad that you shared that.
And then I think that once you're in a position where you're growing your operation, I think the biggest thing is like, now you have all these people who you depend on, and your number one detriment to you continuing to strive and prosper is having to rehire, to retrain, to reacclimate, because you can't retain talent. And you can't retain talent if you're trying to keep the whole pie.
Wow. Well, that is brilliant. And I'm going to go to the next question. If you are a music man in any way, shape, or form, what type of song or genre or artist fills up your bucket and inspires you?
So I could not be. So I'm a huge music person.
Okay.
My wife and I probably go to listen to live music at least once to twice a week on average.
Okay.
I love acoustic, anything acoustic in general. I'm about it. I like, alt rock from like the early 2000s, like stuff like Goo Goo Dolls, John Mayer, Third Eye Blind, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm also big time into like, I'm down for like classic rock stuff, like Steve Miller Band, stuff like the Stones, stuff like, Journey.
Zach, are you hungry, or is that a dog I hear in the background in the room over there somewhere? What kind of pup do you have over there?
He's a German Shepherd mix.
Oh, I hear him over there.
But yeah, nice. What I was gonna say is that I'm actually a massive T Swift fan, and my wife and I went to the opening show at Glendale, Arizona this past year. I bought that for her for Christmas.
Nice.
And I think that when I'm working out, I like hip hop stuff. I like Drake. I like Kanye West. I like Joyner Lucas. I like Eminem. I can get into some more punk stuff like Linkin. I'm a big Linkin Park guy. But then if like what really intrinsically is my baseline, like hits home for me, it's like I'm the military guy. So it's like, you already know the answer is country music, Morgan Wallen. That's my man. I'm a big country music guy. Morgan Wallen, Eric Church, Sam Hunt. Those are my guys.
Awesome. Man, I should have opened today to ask you about music. Man, you just lit up, and you're talking about Taylor Swift over here, and I'm thinking about like football from recently, whatnot. But when I took my kids to school every day, like about 3 or 4 years ago, we listened to Welcome to New York and Shake It Off like every morning on the drive. They loved it. They loved it. So super cool. Yeah. Well, time for one last question. And the wrap-up question, and you have the last word, Zach. You're on the Eternal Optimist podcast. And when I say the words Eternal Optimist, what does that mean to you?
I actually, in my gym 2 days ago, we have a quote board every week where we update the quote. And the quote that I wrote on the board was, never underestimate how far you can go by simply believing in yourself. And I think that this again comes down to what fills up your cup. How early are you willing to wake up? How much effort are you willing to put in? What time do you go to bed? What time do you stop working? Are you focused on relentlessly trying to self-improve? And I think that if you do those things, I think if you listen to podcasts, read books, aspire to get into circles where people know more things than you in a specific topic, I think that it is inevitable that you will persevere. I think it's inevitable that you will prosper. And I think that taking that mindset, that optimist mindset, translates into, exponential growth. And I think that ultimately in this life, we're all after trying to be better, be better people, be better for our families. And I think that, that starts with you.